1 trash bag, 1 bowl. Saltwater, sunlight, 6 hours. Drinkable freshwater, 0 electricity, 0 filter, 0 chemicals, 0 cost. The U.S. military has used this method since the 1940s. Sailors have used it for centuries. NASA designed advanced versions for space. The physics is elementary school science. Water evaporates, salt stays behind. Vapor condenses on a cool surface. You collect it. It is pure. Your $4 plastic bottle traveled 1,500 miles in a diesel truck, sat on a shelf for 3 months, and contains microplastics the company does not disclose. This traveled 3 feet. From the bag to the bowl, your bottled water habit just became obsolete. The device is called a solar still. It is the simplest water purification technology in existence. It uses one physical principle that every child learns in school. When water is heated, it evaporates. When water vapor contacts a cooler surface, it condenses back into liquid. During evaporation, only the water molecules leave the surface. Salt, bacteria, viruses, heavy metals, chemical contaminants, and every dissolved substance remain behind in the original container. The condensed water is pure H2O, distilled, sterile, drinkable. This principle is not a discovery. It is the water cycle, the exact process that produces every drop of rain on Earth. The sun heats the ocean. Water evaporates. Vapor rises, cools, condenses into clouds, and falls as freshwater rain. The sun has been desalinating the ocean for 4.5 billion years. A solar still does not improve on this physics. It simply captures the process in your backyard, in miniature, on demand, and for as long as humans have understood evaporation, they have used this principle to produce drinkable water from sources that would otherwise kill them. In the 4th century BC, the Greek philosopher Aristotle described solar distillation in his treatise Meteorologica. He observed that when seawater evaporated, the vapor that rose was fresh, and when collected, produced drinkable water. He noted that Greek sailors already used simple evaporation techniques during long sea voyages to convert ocean water into something they could drink. This was 2,400 years ago. The principle was known, the method was practiced, the science was documented. During the Age of Sail, European naval vessels carried basic distillation setups as emergency freshwater systems. In the 1500s, Arab alchemists refined solar distillation techniques for producing freshwater in desert regions where no other source existed. By the 17th century, the method was standard knowledge among seafaring nations. Then, in 1872, a Swedish engineer named Charles Wilson built something extraordinary in the Chilean mining town of Las Salinas, a solar still covering 4,459 square meters, roughly 48,000 square feet of basin area, using 64 shallow wooden trays lined with blackened material, covered by glass panels angled to collect condensation. The still produced up to 22,700 liters of fresh water per day, approximately 6,000 gallons, from salt water. It ran entirely on sunlight, no fuel, no pumps, no mechanical components. It operated continuously for over 40 years, supplying fresh water to a mining operation in one of the driest deserts on Earth. That was 153 years ago. A solar-powered desalination plant, the size of a football field, producing thousands of gallons of fresh water per day from seawater, built with wood and glass in the 19th century, without electricity, without a membrane, without reverse osmosis, without a single technology that the modern desalination industry considers necessary. Now here is where the military enters the story. During World War II, the United States Navy faced a critical problem. Pilots shot down over the Pacific Ocean had no access to fresh water. Seawater would dehydrate and kill them faster than drinking nothing at all. Carrying enough fresh water in the cockpit was impossible given weight constraints. Rescue could take days. Military engineers developed a collapsible solar still small enough to fit in a pilot's survival kit. It consisted of an inflatable plastic structure, a dark-colored collection basin, and a transparent canopy. Seawater was poured into the basin. Sunlight heated the dark surface, evaporating the water. The vapor condensed on the underside of the transparent canopy and dripped into a collection channel as pure fresh water. The device weighed ounces, it cost pennies to manufacture, and it turned the Pacific Ocean into a drinking fountain for any pilot stranded at sea. That solar still was issued in Navy and Air Force survival kits for decades. The principle was taught at the Navy's SEER School: survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, where every military aviator and special forces operator learns to survive with nothing but what the environment provides. Building a solar still from a poncho, a container, and a rock is considered a foundational survival skill by the Department of Defense. It is trusted to keep soldiers alive when every other system has failed. NASA went further. For manned space missions, where water resupply is impossible, NASA has researched and designed solar distillation systems that operate in microgravity and extreme thermal environments. A 2020 study from MIT, funded in part by federal research grants, developed a passive solar desalination device that uses a multi-layer evaporation and condensation system to produce fresh water at rates significantly higher than traditional single-basin solar stills. The researchers described it as a technology that could provide drinking water to communities without access to electricity or infrastructure anywhere in the world. The military trusts it, NASA funds it, MIT develops it, the physics is taught in middle school, and the average American has never built one, has never been taught to build one, and spends $36 billion a year buying the same molecule in plastic bottles instead. Let us talk about those bottles. The global bottled water industry was valued at approximately $350 billion in 2024. In the United States alone, consumers spend over $36 billion annually on bottled water. Per capita consumption has reached nearly 47 gallons per person per year. That is more bottled water than beer, more than milk, more than any other packaged beverage in the country. A gallon of tap water in the United States costs approximately $0.004. 4/10 of 1 cent. A gallon of bottled water costs between $1.50 and $8 depending on the brand. That is a markup of somewhere between 37,500% and 200,000%. And what are you getting for that markup? In many cases, the same water. Dasani, one of the best-selling bottled water brands in America and owned by Coca-Cola, is filtered municipal tap water. Aquafina, owned by PepsiCo, is purified tap water. You are paying a 200,000% markup for water that originated from the same municipal supply as the water in your kitchen faucet, passed through a corporate filtration system, and was sealed in a plastic bottle manufactured from petroleum. And that bottle is the problem nobody on the label wants to discuss. In 2018, a study commissioned by Orb Media tested 259 bottles of water from 27 countries across 11 major brands including Aquafina, Dasani, Evian, Nestle, Pure Life, and San Pellegrino. 93% of the bottles tested contained microplastic particles. The average bottle contained 325 microplastic particles per liter. Some individual bottles contained over 10,000 particles. The plastics identified included polypropylene, polystyrene, nylon, and polyethylene terephthalate, the same PET plastic that the bottle itself is made from. The container was contaminating the contents. The study was published and covered by The Guardian, Forbes, CBC, and dozens of other international outlets. The World Health Organization launched a health review in response, and in the years since, the industry has not eliminated microplastics from its products because the microplastics come from the packaging itself. The plastic bottle leaches microscopic particles into the water it holds. The longer the water sits in the bottle, the more particles accumulate. The warmer the storage temperature, the faster the leaching. A bottle that sat in a hot warehouse for weeks before reaching a store shelf has been leaching plastic into the water the entire time. You are paying $4 for water that has been contaminated by its own container. A solar still produces water that has never touched plastic. It has never touched any manufactured surface until you choose to collect it. The water is produced by evaporation, the same process that creates rain and condensation, the same process that forms do. It contacts only air and whatever clean surface you provide for collection. Zero microplastics, zero dissolved solids, zero contaminants. A TDS meter, which measures total dissolved solids in parts per million, will read 0 for solar distilled water. Tap water typically reads 200 to 400. Bottled water reads 50 to 300 depending on the brand and mineral content. Solar distilled water is the purest water available to any human being without laboratory equipment. Now here is how to build one. In 5 minutes, for $0. The simplest version requires a bowl, a cup, a sheet of clear plastic, a trash bag or plastic wrap, a small weight, a rock or a coin, and sunlight. That is all. Place the bowl in direct sunlight. Fill it halfway with salt water, dirty water, pond water, or any water source that is not safe to drink. Place the cup in the center of the bowl. The cup must be shorter than the rim of the bowl so the plastic can drape over it without dipping into the cup. Stretch the clear plastic over the top of the bowl and seal the edges. You can use tape, a rubber band, or just press the plastic against the outside of the bowl tightly. The seal does not need to be airtight. It just needs to prevent the vapor from escaping sideways. Place the small weight in the center of the plastic directly over the cup. This creates a low point in the plastic directly above the collection vessel. The weight should be heavy enough to create a visible dip, but light enough not to collapse the plastic into the water below. Now wait. Sunlight heats the water in the bowl. The water evaporates. The vapor rises and contacts the underside of the plastic, which is cooler than the heated water below because it is exposed to ambient air on its outer surface. The vapor condenses on the plastic. Gravity pulls the condensation droplets downward along the surface of the plastic toward the lowest point, which is directly over the cup. The droplets converge, grow, and drip off the low point into the cup. After 4 to 6 hours of direct sunlight, you will have collected between half a cup and a full cup of pure distilled water. The water in the bowl will still contain all its original salt, bacteria, and contaminants. The water in the cup contains none of them. It is pure for a more productive version. Use a larger container, a plastic storage bin, a kiddie pool, or even a hole dug in the ground lined with plastic works. The larger the evaporation surface, the more water you produce. A ground-level solar still dug into moist soil can extract water from the ground itself, no input water required. The sun heats the soil, moisture in the soil evaporates, and the plastic above captures and condenses it. For maximum output, use black material on the bottom of the basin. Black absorbs more solar radiation and heats the water faster. A black trash bag lining the bottom of a bowl or bin can increase evaporation rate by 20 to 30%. Use the clearest, most transparent plastic you can find for the cover. Clear plastic transmits the most sunlight to the water surface below. Every percentage of light that reaches the water increases the evaporation rate and therefore the output. In ideal conditions, full sun, low humidity, ambient temperatures above 80 degrees, a well-designed DIY solar still can produce 1 to 2 liters of fresh water per day per square meter of basin area. A still built from a large plastic bin with a 4 square foot surface area can produce roughly 1.5 liters of water per day. That is enough drinking water for one person in a survival scenario. For sustained household use, multiple stills can be built and operated in parallel. For stills producing 1.5 liters each, yield 6 liters per day, roughly 1.5 gallons, enough for a family's drinking and cooking needs. The total cost of materials is zero if you use household items you already own. The operating cost is zero. The energy source is the sun. The maintenance requirement is zero. The waste produced is zero. Now, let us compare the two supply chains. Your bottled water. Water is extracted from a municipal source or spring. It is pumped through a filtration plant. It is UV treated. It is sealed into a bottle injection molded from PET plastic, a petroleum derivative. The bottle is capped, labeled, boxed, palletized, loaded onto a diesel truck, and shipped an average of 300 to 1,500 miles, depending on the brand and region. It is unloaded into a warehouse where it sits for days to weeks. It is shipped again to a retail store. It is placed on a shelf under fluorescent lighting. You drive to the store, purchase it, drive home, drink it, and throw the bottle away. The bottle enters a landfill where it will remain for approximately 450 years. Less than 30% of plastic bottles in the U.S. are recycled. The rest become permanent waste. The production of 1 ton of PET plastic releases approximately 3 tons of CO2. Globally, over 500 billion plastic bottles are produced every year. The carbon footprint of the bottled water industry is measured in hundreds of millions of tons of CO2 annually. Your solar still water, salt water, or contaminated water enters a bowl. Sunlight provides energy. Water evaporates. Vapor condenses on a plastic sheet. Fresh water drips into a cup. Total distance traveled 3 feet. Total carbon emissions, 0. Total plastic waste, 0. If you reuse the same plastic sheet, total cost, 0. Total infrastructure required: a bowl, a bag, and the nearest star. One method requires a global industrial supply chain spanning petroleum extraction, plastic manufacturing, bottling plants, trucking networks, retail infrastructure, and waste management systems across continents. The other requires gravity, sunlight, and the phase change properties of water. And here is the question that the $350 billion industry does not want you to sit with. 2.2 billion people on Earth do not have access to safely managed drinking water. The United Nations estimates that by 2025, half the world's population will live in water-stressed areas. Governments and development organizations have spent hundreds of billions on desalination plants, water treatment facilities, and pipeline infrastructure. Industrial desalination plants cost $500 million to over $1 billion to build. They require enormous amounts of electricity to operate. They produce brine waste that damages marine ecosystems when discharged back into the ocean. And the same molecule those plants produce can be extracted from the same ocean using a sheet of plastic and sunlight. The method scales down to a single bowl for one person. It scales up to a 48,000 square foot basin for an entire community. As Charles Wilson proved in Chile in 1872, it requires no electricity, no membrane, no pump, no chemical pre-treatment, no brine discharge, no operating budget. The technology is not waiting for a breakthrough. The breakthrough happened 2,400 years ago when Aristotle wrote it down. It was proven at industrial scale 153 years ago in Chile. It was miniaturized for military survival kits 80 years ago. It was refined by MIT in 2020. At every point in this timeline, the technology worked. At no point in this timeline was it deployed at meaningful scale to address the global water crisis. Not because it does not work, because it does not generate revenue. A solar still has no consumable filter to replace, no membrane to maintain, no electricity to meter, no bottle to sell, no brand to market, no subscription to renew. It is a one-time assembly of free materials that produces water indefinitely, using an energy source that no corporation has figured out how to bill you for. The bottled water industry is not selling you water. Water covers 71% of the Earth's surface. Water falls from the sky. Water exists in the atmosphere, in the soil, in every river and lake and ocean on the planet. What the industry is selling you is the belief that you cannot access water without them. That clean water requires their factory, their truck, their bottle, their brand, and their price tag. A trash bag and the sun prove that belief is worth exactly what it costs: nothing. The physics has been understood for 2,400 years. The military has trusted it since the 1940s. NASA has funded it for space. MIT has optimized it for the developing world. The largest solar still ever built ran for 40 years in the Chilean desert, producing 6,000 gallons a day without a single moving part. And somehow, in a country that spends $36 billion a year on bottled water, that faces water shortages in 40 out of 50 states, and that teaches every child how the water cycle works. Not a single public school teaches that same child how to turn that knowledge into a glass of water. The water cycle is in the textbook. The solar still is not. One is curriculum. The other is a threat to a $350 billion industry. And that distinction is the only reason you are learning this from a video instead of from a classroom. Now you know: a bowl, a bag, sunlight, and the same physics that makes it rain. That is all it takes. That is all it has ever taken.